My name is Randy Steidl. I'd like to tell you a little bit from where I come from. I come from a little town called Paris, Illinois. It's a town of 9,000 people. It's 160 miles southeast of Chicago. And I grew up there. Raised my family there. I worked hard. I played hard. Wasn't much else to do in that little town, but they had a lot of taverns and a lot of churches. Well, I was a devout Catholic, altar boy. Also was a divorced father with custody of my 9-year-old son. And I played hard, worked hard like everybody else. Been in a few scuffles with the law, mostly misdemeanor convictions, barroom brawls, things like that. So I wasn't an angel, but I was no killer either. On July 6, 1986, there was a gruesome murder in this little town that just shook the whole town. A newlywed couple by the name of Dyke and Karen Rose was viciously stabbed to death over 60 times. 3 days after these murders, my co-defendant and myself were pulled out of a tavern. We were shooting pool. Well, before we were pulled out of the tavern, one of the victim's employers walked in circulating a $25,000 reward through every tavern in town. Came up directly to me, asked me if I knew anything about his secretary and her husband being murdered. I said, "Why are you asking me? I got no clue." Well, it kind of upset me, and I asked my co-defendant, I said, "Why is he coming in here asking that?" 5 minutes after he left, the police rolled in, took us out of there in front of a full bar, took us downtown, questioned us, we gave them our alibis, our whereabouts for 2 or 3 days before the murders. We thought we were released after that and no longer considered a suspect. Well, 7 months later, there was a knock on the door. 5 police officers come rushing in, cuff me, throw me on the ground, pat me down, throw me in the squad car, take me downtown to the jail. My little brother was a police officer back then, had just become a rookie state police officer. They used him to come in to try to get me to confess to the crime in order to avoid the death penalty. Well, I can't tell you how devastating that was for me to have my little brother say, "Well, you had to know something, you've done something because they don't arrest people that aren't guilty." Well, after arguing back and forth with little brother, he had to go home and break the news to my son and my mother. Well, that arrest, I sat in jail for about 85 to 90 days before the trial started. The evidence against me was a town drunk and a drug addict woman who both had charges pending. Both were on probation. Both said they were at the crime scene and watched me and my co-defendant commit this horrible murder, but yet neither one of them saw each other there. So I'm thinking there was no physical evidence tying me to the crime. I got a corroborated alibi that remains corroborated to this very day. How can they possibly charge me with these murders? My trial lasted about 8 days. The state put on their case in about 3.5. We got to take our turn. I was just sure that all the inconsistencies in the alleged eyewitnesses' testimony would be seen by the jury. Well, to top it off, they even brought a jailhouse snitch in and said I talked about the crime. He was in jail for burglarizing the state's attorney's office. So he had a lot of motive to cooperate with the state. Again, I had faith in the system. The jury deliberated 6.5 hours. Thought somebody's in there fighting for me. Came back guilty. I can't describe to you the feeling that felt when I saw the jury walk in, looking at the tops of their feet, couldn't look me in the eye, and found me guilty of a crime that I was innocent of. The next day, they had the death penalty proceeding. The jury took 5 minutes to sentence me to death because they used those 5 misdemeanor barroom fights I had as a motive, as a pattern of showing how violent tendencies I had. Never used a weapon on anybody in my life. Well, the appeals process in Illinois was futile. I lost every state appeal there was. Even after college journalism students found new evidence. I hired experts. Dr. Michael Bowden testified in O.J. Simpson's trial. I had arson investigators who examined a crime scene. Said the lamp that was allegedly broken over somebody before the murders could not have been broken before the murders because it wasn't covered in soot, like everything else at the crime scene was. All this evidence was denied in state court. It wasn't until 2000 when an investigator that was assigned the job of reinvestigating my case found that the real culprit of these murders was Karen Rhodes' employer and what she saw at work, cash and machine guns going to Chicago every week. She said, I don't understand this. We don't deal with cash. She threatened to quit. Her employer said, you can't quit. 2 days later, they're dead. This investigation found that this employer had been responsible for at least 7 other deaths of people that had business dealings with him. Well, this man had funneled tens of thousands of dollars through the last 20-some years to campaign donations to 2 governor's offices. Lieutenant Michael Callahan asked that he be allowed to go to the governor's people and say they got 2 innocent men locked up. Here's the real culprit. This is the contract killer right here. It was denied. He said, you can't go there. It's too politically sensitive. This honest police officer said, since when is murder too politically sensitive? As I said, I lost all my state appeals. This investigator was pulled off the case. He tried to reopen it 5 times. Yet me and my co-defendant languished in prison. Him doing a life sentence, me doing, at that time, I just got a new sentencing hearing. After 12 years on death row and watching 12 men walk to their death, you know, I get a natural life sentence. Well, to me, that was not much of a consolation prize. I'm innocent. I often wondered why I didn't see those 12 men kick, scream, or cry going to their death. It wasn't until about 3 years into my life sentence that I realized this is a fate worse than death. It's a passive death sentence. Had they given me the opportunity to get back on that gurney, I'd have buckled my cell phone. That's how maddening the monotony was at times. And if it wasn't for the fact that the journalism class, this honest state police investigator, and the federal court, an honest federal judge, ruled in my last appeal, my federal aid, granted all 17 issues, said this defendant had continually met his burden. The witnesses had recanted. Found out there was no drug deal between this newlywed couple. Said the cops told them what to say. They recanted 5 times in front of a court reporter and videotape. This was through state court, and it was all denied. It wasn't until I got to federal court that I finally, they ordered the sentence vacated, conviction vacated, and me retried or released in 120 days.